on this topic, right, I want to talk about both these teams briefly, but let's talk about Mad Lions first, Sabatine. What do you actually think of this team? Because obviously, with the fact that they're the European champions, they were at MSI, they took the fucking damn one team to 5 games. Like, in theory, we're supposed to consider them Europe's best team, you know. So, do they live up to the billing for you?
They have a rough early summer split, but that's pretty normal for every team that goes to MSI because, I mean, they are players, not robots. So I understand that they don't put as much when they come back from MSI. I mean, they are the 100 Thieves of Europe. They are the growing team. I mean, previous GG, right, bought by 100 Thieves. They just have a very good set of players. They were kind of all the best rookies, upcoming rookies at the moment when they got hired. I think that their staff is really good. I mean, it was the former staff of Splice, because Splice was Peter Dunn, Duke, and Mac. Duke went to Vitality. There was Mac that stayed in Mad Lions, and I mean, Peter went eventually to NA. But I know, like, from the fact that he's a very, very clever person and he knows a lot about the game. And I think this is just a set of very smart players about the game, and it really shows. And once again, they just got an edge of, I think, working so hard with having great fundamentals and great ethics that they just managed to outperform everybody in Europe. And I'm very happy because I feel like on top of having the G2 Fnatic rivalry, now we have the Rogue versus Mad Lions, and it's always like banger games.
Yes.
And I feel like it's very, very important for the region that G2 is losing to Mad, and we have this new fresh air coming and new storylines. Okay. So I'm overall extremely happy that the product that was kind of aging, which was Splice, changed into the bunch of rookies that are actually taking the throne and the king. And I think it's only beneficial for the scene and for the region. And on the aspect of the game, they're just playing very, very well at the game. Like, there is no comment. Like, they have very, very good players.
What do you think, Wicker? Are they the best team?
I'm coming from a different perspective. So I did the same bet as you, and I have reasons for it. So I think Mad Lions last week didn't play that well. They won one game and then they lost a game. They played against Misfits and Rogue, which are 2 really good teams. I think the Misfits and Mad Lions games, both of the teams played pretty sloppy. And then the Rogue game, Rogue actually gets 3 kills behind very early on in the game. Mad Lions should snowball very hard from that, especially because it's been bot lane. But they didn't really manage to do that, and Rogue made a massive comeback. I think Mad Lions have been looking weak recently. And I think XL have been looking absolutely phenomenal. So I would consider XL a top team, probably like top 4, top 5, and Mad Lions the same. But I think right now, with how they've been playing last week and recently, I think XL have a small edge, and the odds are just amazing for the team. So I had to make that one.
Let's flip it and talk about XL then. So obviously, like we discussed it a little bit on the Amazing episode, they did this move where they brought in these 2 players, which, as far as I can tell, they weren't really like super secret. Like, people knew these players were good. Apparently, XL themselves even thought, they claim, about using like the Adrienne guy, for example, like already at Adrienne at the beginning of this split, but like they chose not to for some reason. I can't remember what the reason they gave was. It sounded a bit bunkum, but whatever. They claim this was the case. Right, Sabatine, are you actually going to be like the rest of us? Are you going to drink the Kool-Aid that this team's really good now? Will they just fall back off to being okay? What do you think?
I think that's I compare Excel to Astralis, and I think that's for teams that have been making changes. I think Astralis have the same rank, but they look much worse, while Excel actually plays well. Like, they play better than their ranking, and Astralis plays worse. And I think that's the dynamic is definitely upward for Excel. I know that, I mean, there have been a lot of backstories during the year, and I mean, everybody can make mistake. I'm not here to like shit talk any organization. I've made my fair share of dumb thing in the past. I'm very happy because I've seen, like, for instance, the interview of Advienne, and he seems to be a genuinely super nice guy, and I feel like the whole environment works super, super fine. So if they're happy and they can actually challenge and show that sometimes bringing rookies and giving them the sad part of it is, as you said, like, if they're that good and the dynamic is so good, I wish they weren't like thrown in the middle of a split, but they were given a fair chance from January. Because if you take these 5 people, I mean, maybe nobody knew, right? But if you take these 5 players with this environment and they're very happy to play together, you just wish they could play from January, and maybe right now they would be a top team.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. Like, one thing we even talked about in one of the last shows was Patrick is really, really good. We talked about Kris being amazing in top lane. He just haven't really showed himself. And then we talked about this team being all-around nuke dog, right? Back then they're losing all the time. And the thing is, they brought in the exact pieces they needed. They brought in a new support who fits well, he's support player. And then they brought in a carry playmaking jungler that sets up nuke dog all the time. They literally picked the exact players that they needed for the team, got them in, and that's why I think they have such a big edge now compared to before. But again, as I said earlier, their odds are just amazing as well. It was 3.8, then I bet on them. So, I mean, that's really good odds.
Yeah, it make me feel like, you know, the example you were taking, Thorin, about the guy that was picking the random ass player that was fitting their playstyle.
Yes.
I feel like Excel is not great at everything, but I think that they at least know they're good at one thing.
Yes.
So as long as the game doesn't change the way that the thing they're good at is gone, I think they can clinch games. In a BO5 setup, it might be much harder for them because usually these teams are a little bit two-dimensional and they get like out-diversed by better teams. But it feels very good to know that these teams are gonna be tough opponents, even for teams like G2 or Mad Lions or any other top teams in the region.
Yeah. I mean, one reason why I actually have some confidence they can be good is, like, in my opinion, the main problem XL the Augurs had is they just aren't signing very many good players. Like, I always wonder when I look at the people they're picking up, like, do they actually have money in XL? Like, they always look like they're the ones where they're picking players that no one else was trying to get, typically. So I always wonder in that sense, like, were you given the tools to work with? But if you get them, I actually do think, and I'll just say, go and look at the results. There's a reason why this team is always right on the borderline of playoffs, no matter who is in the lineup. Go look at the last 3 splits worth of players they had. They have players who aren't even in LEC anymore, and they were like 1 game from playoffs. So one thing I've always credited Youngbok with is I think he is a really good coach at sort of being a bit cynical, and when a team is flawed, just figuring out, like you say, Zaberty, like, what can this team actually do? Like, with these players, basically, here's the analogy. Yeah, Youngbok doesn't have all the best Lego pieces, but he can make, like, fucking something out of it. Like, I've only got enough pieces to make a tractor. Right, there we go. Difference is, some of these other teams have got no fucking good pieces. They're trying to make, like, a fucking battle cruiser. Like, it's never going to work for them. So, I think, basically, he's like a pragmatic coach, in my opinion. So, I don't know. I put it this way. I'm sort of riding the hype initially. I don't know what they'll do in the playoffs. But I do think this could be the game changer, and they look like they could be a playoff team now, at least.
Isn't it like because I'm just looking at the standings, so who's out of playoff? Because if Misfits, Rogue, Fnatic, Mad Lions, and G2 are coming, so Schalke, Vitality, SK, and Astralis is not making it. This is what you say.
My problem is this, right? If I look at the teams that are in there at the moment, right, I can't really hate on Fnatic anymore. They've just been too good. I've got to kind of give them credit. Astralis, I don't think makes it. I'm amazed they've won as many games as they have. Fair play to them. I do think Magic Felix is good. I think XL can make it. I personally think Schalke might be the team that drops off. Nuclear actually looks decent, but the problem is the Kiri issue will have to be addressed at some point in time. Like, he's having some bad games, mate. He can throw. SK gaming is pretty bad. I don't know, because I guess if I can only pick 6, let me see. The problem is this. I actually do feel like Misfits is going to cool off, but they've won a lot of fucking games already. Like, it's pretty hard to not make the playoffs if you've won 7-2. So let me think. If I'm picking 6 teams, so if I take Rogue, I'll go Rogue, Mad Lions, Fnatic, G2, so there's 4 teams already. If I say XL makes it, I've only got 1 spot left. Yeah, the problem, I guess, is I'm basically picking between, like, Misfits and Vitality. I can't really hate on Misfits. I'll have to just say for now, like, Vitality doesn't make it, then, I guess. Because one of Vitality or XL is probably not making it, if I'm being realistic.
But
what do you actually... Yeah, go on.
I think that's one important thing to note as well. I don't think we necessarily have to pick 6 teams for playoffs. Personally, I would be picking 7 teams that could make it, and then we don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? I think Schalke is going to start it. I don't think those 3 are making it, but the last 7 teams can all make it. And it could happen that G2 doesn't even make it, right? G2 is one of the bottom ones.
Maybe.
Right now. Maybe they don't make it. Maybe it's Vitality. It could be anyone. Whoever underperforms with the rest of the teams might be the ones on the chopping block.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like G2 is not looking like the way they were looking against Misfits last week was great. Like, they were back at it. And the fact they lost this game is such a like momentum stopper. So I can't really know like how tilted they are and if they worked well this week. For sure, I mean, Vitality with the changes, you really never know. And if Ziganda doesn't work, bring back SLT is going to be such a mess for them. I don't know like how the team dynamic is going to adapt. Schalke, unfortunately, I mean, they're on the sunset of their existence in the LEC. I don't know how it affects the players and stuff. They have great players for sure, but I feel like most of their players must be thinking about their off-season more than going to Worlds with Schalke. And SK, I mean, SK is a very unfortunate set of events. We haven't been mentioning them that much, but I mean, I feel like for me, the teams that are not going to make it are Astralis, Vitality, Schalke, and SK. And I wish SK is going to be able to change, because I don't think they are like a bad org, but I feel like they just have a very bad year this year. Like it's I mean, it's just not working with too many changes.
The weird thing about their team, maybe we'll just talk about that, we'll make it the last topic. The weird thing about the SK one is, like, first of all, just as a disclaimer, I did used to work for SK Gaming, but to be fair, I did leave in 2012, so that was a long time ago now. I'll just say that for the sake in case people think I'm being biased or something. But I would agree. Right, here's the issue. If we're talking about them as an org in League of Legends, I can tell you a problem they've always had is they just don't want to spend money. Like, I know that from the top, from talking to some of the guys back in the day. They're a team that, like, they want to kind of min-max, basically. They want to pay, like, just enough to get, like, a decent player, and then they just hope the coaching staff do the rest, basically. Now, if in the context that they're not going to spend big, I actually think they've done pretty well the last few years. Like, they're another org that's never getting the biggest names, but they're always, like, they've been playoffs a bunch of times, or they're just outside playoffs. Like, generally, with the pieces they've had, they've done a good job. My issue is just that I don't feel like they're an org that's ever going to be a top team, because they look like, even if they get a good player, they don't go break the bank to keep them. The best players leave the team, and then they just start over again with the rookies. So I put it this way, I'm not one of the people who wants them, like, kicked out of LEC instantly, because they've just been too good performance-wise. I think it would be unfair. But I do think, like, they are lacking a little something. Like, I never feel like any SK Gaming Live is really going for the fucking title. And if it is, like I say, if they have a sick player like Southmade, or even when Crownshot was good, you know they're going to be leaving eventually. Limit all the good players basically just leave the team. Like, they go to better squads.
Yeah, and it's just overall very hard to retain your players if you don't raise them. Like, even top sports club, you know, they have to raise their players. Like, yes. Messi wasn't paid as much when he started at Barcelona, and then they just have to, you know, match the price. I feel like the problem, I would say, just in SK is they're making too many gambles at once. Like, Tweets brought back from NA was a very clever move. I think Blue is a very good mid laner. I think Jesu is it's very hard for me to rate ADCs in general, but I think Jesu is at least decent. I don't think, like, he's super bad. Janak is a very good player. So if they didn't have this kind of weird situation with things that actually left the team during the offseason and they kept the jungle, I think they could be even competing with Misfits, because this team was playing decent in the spring split. So if they just when you get 5 rookies, or rookies sophomore, I would say, it's 5 bets. And it's too much, right? Like, yes. It's combined bets, right? You're just, like, trying to have, like, min-maxing as much as you can. And they had, like, 4 out of 5 that worked and is working fairly well, or at least much better than expected. But all it takes is one player that's actually not making it. And eventually the whole project feels like a failure. Whereas I think that if they kept these 4 players next year and they actually got a jungle that match exactly what they want to do within the game, they could actually be a top 5 tier contender, because their players are all very good individually.
Yeah, basically the analogy there, like he was using the Zabatina, is like the premise of, like, in betting, it's called a parlay, isn't it? It's where you do a bet where they all compound. So like basically, it's a famous in European football, you do this, where they'll give you, like, a couple of good games, but then obviously they give you a couple that are mega unlikely. But, you know, if you get all 5, in English we call them an accumulator, like, you have to get all 5. But the idea is, if you get all 5, obviously the odds go mental, and it might be like, you know, like 50-1. But the reason it's 50-1 is, even if you get 4 out of the 5, the 5th one's, like, the insane hard one. So I agree with the premise, by the way. I also say the same thing about rookies. If you bring in a rookie, bring in, like, 2. Don't bring in 4. What the odds all 4 work out at once and don't cause problems with each other? That's madness. What are you going to say, Wicked?
No, I just want to say, I think that the original SK lineup was actually decent. I think they had some opportunities, as Sabine also said. And I also think Tuns was a really good jungler, so it didn't really make any sense for me with the roster change they made. And now, after seeing the roster change that they've actually made, and then roster changed again, it just seems like it's a complete kindergarten of one SK right now in the management. And I think they don't even know what they're doing. So they're just throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping it works and sticks somewhat.
I also say this because the elephant in the room that never gets talked about in this SK case is it is about Jesus. Like, he is the coach and he is the one who made some of these moves. And you look at his career, he has made these moves in like 3 different fucking orgs now. So what I would say is this. I actually think if you ever talk to him, he clearly does know like quite a lot about the game. He has an interesting perspective as a coach. I think he is trying to do some unique things. But my problem is this. Unlike a lot of other coaches who absolutely fairly can say, I didn't have full control or I didn't get to pick the players, for example. As far as I can tell, he said as much, has been involved in picking the players and choosing who gets in the lineup and subbing people. So I will say, at the end of the day, you have to take the results on the chin, because if you're doing that and you're getting to actually have a lot of say, presumably if you'd have succeeded, you'd have wanted credit, right? That's totally fair. If you'd have actually built this team and made worlds or something, we'd have to say you're the genius who made the team. But it also means if the team completely fails, you also have to take a lot of the blame, unfortunately. That's just the nature of when you get to have a lot of input, in my opinion. Because my problem is this, Sabatine. People are going to think when I say all that I'm saying like, oh, don't do this. No, I want coaches to have that control. Yeah, it's going to have cases like this where it won't work out, but at least in that sense, I know that he got to do exactly what he wanted to do. You know, what his vision was for these players, this aspect of the game. If every coach had that, we'd be in a way better space in the scene, in my opinion, than because I know some of the orgs, like LCS is notorious for this, where they might let the fans think the coach did everything, but he might have had very little say in who they recruited or whether he could sub a player or all sorts of factors. What do you think, Sabatine?
I think that the problem in LCS is usually the liquidity of liquidity, not in terms of money, because it's one aspect, but as well like the amount of player with a specific profile that you want. You want a hyper carry ADC? How many do you have? You want a very selfless mid laner? How many do you have? You want a very resourceful mid laner? How many do you have? Like that's the problem. You already eat the market, and you have like a list of 3 or 4 names with the profile you want, and they're already hired. And then you're gonna have to knock on the door of a specific team and like buy the buyout. So the liquidity, right, which is the amount of interchangeable pieces, is very, very low. Like you have very few players with a specific profile. So that's one problem already, meaning that even if you have the vision, you don't always have the chance to get the type of the player you want or the type of player you want. And on top of that, then there is the vision, because you have to associate in LCS especially that for every single thing you want to get, you're going to pay more for it, right? It's not like in EU, you want a young promising mid laner right now. I can give you 4 names that you can try, and you're not going to pay a lot. So if you're a coach and you have a vision that you want a rookie in mid lane, you're going to get one, and it's not going to cost you a lot. In NA, not only you might not find one, and if you find one, you might have to go and call your investors to get it. So it's completely different, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's completely different. So obviously, I don't blame the management for that, because it is just a different industry. Because rarity, right? It's just bid and ask. If there was 20 times more players in NA, the individual price of player would just drop.
Yeah, supply and
because
demand.
of the competition, right?
Yeah.
And from that, it's not like I don't put it out. Management don't let their players, their coaches make the decision, but it's more so within the decision of management and coaches. You have so many variables that nobody has control over, except if you just like inject Jeff Bezos money into your team. Obviously, nobody ends up having exactly the team they thought about, except if you are like a team that have something else to offer, which is usually already the teams that are in the top.
Yes.
Whereas in EU, you can really find, like, if you're good at scouting and you're in EU, you can make a team that looks like what you want, even though they're not like individually the most skilled. You can really make a team that will look like something. Misfits is one of them. I think SK Spring Split was one of them. I think Vitality is one example, and they don't even have the same playstyle, and they don't even have the same strength. They are just different vision of League of Legends.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.